The night was heavy with fog, and the abandoned asylum loomed like a scar on the edge of town. The locals had long whispered about its cursed halls, but now it was more than rumor. A reality show host named Ryan Storm had transformed it into something darker. The Fear Gauntlet, a place where the bravest souls were tested against their deepest nightmares. Ethan Cross stood at the gates, his breath caught between excitement and dread. He wasn't just here for thrills. He was here to prove something, to himself, to the world, and to Ryan, who had mocked him live on television, saying no man could survive all 6 trials of the gauntlet. Ethan intended to prove him wrong. The gates slammed behind him, echoing like a coffin lid sealing shut. Ryan's voice carried over hidden speakers, smooth and cruel. "Welcome, Ethan. You've entered a place where fear is flesh, and courage is a currency. Let's see how long yours lasts." The first trial came swiftly. Iron doors groaned open to reveal a chamber crawling with spiders. Hundreds of them spilled across the cracked floor, their hairy legs scuttling over stone, their fangs catching the light. Ethan froze, his skin crawling, every instinct screaming to run. "Step inside," Ryan urged, his tone taunting. The moment Ethan crossed the threshold, the doors clanged shut behind him. Darkness pressed in, except for the faint glow of lamps fixed to the walls. Webs hung from the ceiling, thick as ropes, brushing against his face. Something crawled across his hand, then another across his neck. His body jerked in panic, but he forced himself still. A hiss echoed in the shadows. One of the spiders was larger than the rest, its swollen body gleaming black, eyes reflecting red like burning coals. It dropped from the ceiling with a thud, landing inches from Ethan's foot. Every breath he took felt poisoned. He told himself to move, to keep walking, but the ground itself shifted beneath him. Spiders were everywhere, on his arms, his legs, his chest. He swatted wildly, gagging as one brushed across his lips. His mind screamed with images of fangs tearing into his skin, venom searing his veins. Ryan's voice crackled through the speakers. "You're shaking, Ethan. Already? This is only the beginning." The path twisted through the chamber, but the webs grew denser, tangling around his shoulders and chest. Each step was harder than the last. Ethan's breath came fast, ragged, his pulse hammering in his throat. Then, out of nowhere, he felt a sting. Sharp, fiery pain lanced across his ankle. He stumbled, slapping at the spot, certain one of them had sunk its fangs deep. But there was nothing. His body, his mind, couldn't tell fear from truth anymore. At last, a door appeared on the far wall, lit faintly by a single red bulb. Ethan lunged toward it, his body shaking, webs sticking to his face, the crawling sensation refusing to fade. He shoved through the door, slamming it behind him, gasping like a drowning man. Ryan's voice returned, soft and mocking. "One trial survived. Barely. Let's raise the stakes." The second chamber stretched upward like a cathedral stripped bare. A tower rose in the center, ladders climbing into the gloom. Steel beams jutted like broken ribs. At the top waited a narrow platform, suspended high above, with only a thin plank leading to the far side. Ethan's stomach turned cold. Heights, the one thing that had haunted him since childhood, when he'd fallen from a tree and shattered his arm. The memory flashed sharp as glass now, replaying in his mind. "You climb, you cross, you live," Ryan said. "Or you fall. Simple." The climb was torture. Each rung of the ladder felt slick as though greased. His hands ached, muscles burning, but worse was the abyss below. He tried not to look down, but the emptiness pulled at him, whispering of broken bones and split flesh. By the time he reached the top, his legs were shaking uncontrollably. The plank stretched ahead, no wider than his foot, swaying gently with the draft that howled through the rafters. "Walk," Ryan commanded. Ethan placed one foot on the wood. It groaned. He sucked in a sharp breath and forced himself forward. One step, another. The void below seemed endless. His vision blurred, sweat dripping into his eyes. He willed himself not to look, but his gaze betrayed him, downward, into the dark pit waiting to devour him. Suddenly the plank shifted. His body lurched sideways, arms windmilling. He screamed, fighting for balance, and caught himself just in time. His chest heaved, every nerve raw. Ryan's laughter rang in his ears. "Oh, Ethan, you almost made me believe in you." Step by agonizing step, Ethan crept across, until at last he reached the far side. His knees buckled, and he collapsed onto the platform, sobbing with relief. The voice returned, colder now. "Two down. The third will take your breath away." He didn't understand until the next chamber revealed itself. A glass tank stood in the center, water sloshing inside, metal restraints bolted at the bottom. Ethan's heart stopped. "You'll be locked beneath the surface," Ryan said smoothly. "Can you hold your breath long enough to escape? Or will you drown like so many before you?" The water was icy as it closed around him. Chains snapped shut on his wrists and ankles, binding him inside the tank. The lid slammed above, sealing him in darkness. Panic surged instantly. His lungs fought for air, every instinct clawing against the restraints. He pulled, twisted, kicked, but the chains held firm. Bubbles streamed from his nose as his mouth opened in a silent scream. His chest burned, pressure mounting like fire in his veins. He thrashed harder, scraping his wrists raw against the iron. The water distorted his vision, turning Ryan's faint silhouette on the other side of the glass into a laughing shadow. Spots burst in his sight. The need for air became unbearable, primal, overwhelming. He tugged one final time, and something gave way. The shackle on his left wrist snapped free. With desperate fury, he wrenched at the others one by one until they too broke loose. He shot upward, slamming against the lid. For one horrifying second, it refused to budge. Then, with a metallic shriek, it burst open, and he erupted from the tank, collapsing onto the floor, hacking, gasping, sucking air like a newborn. The speakers hummed again. Ryan's voice was darker now, almost satisfied. 3 trials survived. But the night isn't done with you, Ethan. Not by a long shot. The lights flickered. The chamber shook, and new doors yawned open, leading him deeper into the asylum's heart. Ethan staggered forward, soaked, trembling, broken but alive. What waited ahead, he didn't know. But already he could feel it watching him, and Ryan's laughter followed, promising horrors still to come. The asylum's belly seemed to twist and fold around Ethan as he stumbled onward. Every breath rasped in his throat. Every step echoed too loudly in the silence. The stench of mildew and rust filled the air. Ahead, the corridor split in 2 directions, each one vanishing into darkness. For a moment he hesitated, unsure which way to turn. But the speakers crackled again, guiding him forward. "This next trial," Ryan's voice purred, "is reserved for those who fear being forgotten, buried alive." The words sank into Ethan like knives. Buried alive, the nightmare he'd had since childhood, ever since he saw his grandfather's funeral, and wondered what it might feel like if someone inside the coffin wasn't really dead. The floor split beneath his feet before he could react. He dropped, crashing hard into a wooden box that splintered beneath his weight. The lid slammed shut above him. He was trapped. The space was impossibly small. His knees pressed against his chest, his shoulders crammed tight against the sides. He could barely move his fingers, let alone push upward. Dirt began to pour in through cracks in the coffin, trickling across his face, his lips, his eyes. He spat, coughed, choked as the soil filled the little air that remained. Ryan's voice was a whisper in the darkness, cruel and close. "Tell me, Ethan, how long before you scream?" Ethan's lungs seized. He pushed against the lid with every ounce of strength, but the wood didn't budge. His fingers clawed until his nails bent backward, skin splitting. The dirt rose higher, covering his chest, his chin, his mouth. His screams came muffled, strangled, swallowed by the soil. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the panic, his mind whispered a truth. Coffins rot, wood splits, weakness can be found. He shifted, wriggling his arm just enough to wedge his elbow against a crack. With a surge of rage, he rammed it upward. Once, twice. On the third strike, the board gave way with a splintering snap. Cold earth poured in fully now, threatening to smother him. But he forced his hand through the gap, then his arm, clawing upward like a drowning man breaking the surface of the sea. His other hand followed, dirt collapsing all around him, crushing his ribs, bruising his skull. Still he clawed, still he fought, until at last his hand burst into open air. With one final scream, Ethan dragged himself upward, coughing and spitting soil as he broke free, collapsing onto the ground above. His chest heaved, his whole body trembling with exhaustion. Ryan's laughter slithered through the speakers. How poetic! A man clawing out of his own grave. Ethan staggered to his feet, coated in mud, shaking but alive. He wanted to shout back, to curse Ryan's name, but no words came, only ragged breaths and burning rage. The asylum wasn't finished with him. The next passage opened into a labyrinth. Walls of concrete and rusted bars stretched in all directions, twisting and shifting like a living creature. A maze. At first, Ethan thought it was simple navigation, left, right, straight. But soon, the walls began to move. Entire corridors shifted, grinding against each other like gears. The paths behind him sealed themselves shut, trapping him deeper with each step. And then the whispers began. Voices drifting through the corridors. At first he thought it was Ryan, but these weren't mocking. They were desperate, pleading. Help us! Don't leave me here! Run before it finds you! Ethan spun, heart hammering, but the corridors were empty. Still, the voices grew louder, layered with sobs, screams, and faint scratching sounds against the concrete walls. Then the lights flickered. In that half-second of darkness, he saw it, a shape at the end of the hall, too tall, too thin. Its limbs bent wrong, its face hidden by shadow. When the lights blinked back, it was gone. He ran. His feet pounded against the floor, lungs burning, heart tearing itself apart in his chest. The maze twisted endlessly, each turn sharper than the last. But every time the lights flickered, the shape was closer. Sometimes at the edge of his vision, sometimes directly behind him, looming like a shadow ready to consume. The whispers turned into laughter. Dozens of voices, all mocking, all echoing Ryan's tone. Ethan clamped his hands over his ears, but the sound was inside his skull now, drilling deep, threatening to crack him open. At last, a door appeared ahead. Heavy. Iron. His salvation. He sprinted toward it, the shadow stretching closer, closer. Just as he reached for the handle, the lights cut out completely. A breath brushed against the back of his neck. Cold. Hungry. The door flung open, and Ethan hurled himself through, slamming it shut behind him. Silence fell. He collapsed, drenched in sweat, sobbing with relief. Ryan's voice drifted down again, but softer now, almost intimate. You're making it farther than most. But there's one more gift I've saved just for you. The chamber around him flickered with dim light. A mirror stood in the center of the room, tall, old, framed in black iron. He staggered toward it, and froze. His reflection wasn't his own. The face staring back had hollow eyes, lips torn away, flesh rotting from bone. It smiled, wide and hideous, even as Ethan's own mouth hung open in horror. The reflection raised its hand. Ethan didn't move, and still the hand pressed against the glass. A crack spread across the mirror. Then it reached through. Cold fingers clamped around his wrist, yanking him toward the glass. He screamed, pulling back, but the strength was immense. His arm began to sink into the mirror itself, as though the glass were liquid, sucking him in. His reflection's mouth opened wider, stretching impossibly, as if ready to swallow him whole. Ethan? Ryan's voice whispered, no longer mocking but reverent. You've given me more than fear. You've given me a masterpiece. The reflection tugged harder. Ethan's shoulders pressed against the mirror, his face inches from the gaping maw of his twisted double. His body shook with terror, his mind splitting under the pressure of everything he had endured. And then, something snapped inside him. "No," he growled. With every shred of fury, every ounce of survival left in him, Ethan drove his fist into the glass. The mirror exploded, shards slicing his skin, the reflection shattering with an unearthly scream. The force threw him backward, bloodied and broken, but alive. The room dissolved into black. No walls, no floor, nothing. Only Ryan's voice, echoing from every direction at once. "You've survived what no one else has, but did you win? Or did the asylum change you forever?" Ethan tried to stand, but his body wouldn't move. He wasn't sure anymore if he was lying on the asylum floor, or if he'd already been swallowed by the void. His mind reeled, blurring the line between nightmare and reality. And in that endless dark, he heard one last sound. His own laughter. Low, broken, identical to Ryan's. The asylum had claimed him after all.